Good afternoon. I now call to order the meeting of the Curriculum Committee for May 15th, 2025. In accordance with Board Policy 8311, the chair of a committee at their discretion after consultation with the staff liaison may convene an in-person committee meeting. Otherwise, all committee meetings will be held electronically. Today's meeting is being held virtually and broadcast through Microsoft Teams. In order to efficiently conduct this meeting, all voting items this afternoon will be done by a roll call vote. Board members will say their name before making and seconding a motion as applicable, as well as when requesting discussion on an agenda item. Ms. Cox, please call the roll to determine the presence of a quorum of the committee.
Ms. Chikakalu?
Present.
Ms. Dominowski?
Present.
Dr. Savoy? Ms. Stolowski?
Present.
Ms. Lichter?
Present.
Thank you.
Please call the roll of staff members participating in today's meeting.
Dr. DiDonato?
Present.
Ms. Mashinda?
Present.
Dr. Kraft?
Present.
Ms. Schumacher?
Present.
Ms. Gogovich?
Present.
Ms. Greenberg?
Present.
Mr. Cromwell?
Present.
Mr. Connolly?
Present.
Ms. Gianelli?
Present.
Ms. Fisher? Ms. Pritchett?
Present.
Ms. Parham?
Present.
And I'm checking to see if we have anybody else.
How can you forget?
Ms. Schumacher?
I'm present.
And I'm checking to
Doug
see,
Al-
and Dr.
Doug Elmendorf
Elmendorf,
is
sorry.
present.
Yep.
Yes.
And Ms. Blotner.
Present.
Okay, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Committee chairs will facilitate discussion by calling up names of committee members to speak in turn. Committee members will also acknowledge a question by calling on the chair, then saying their name. Staff members will answer any questions posed by committee members by saying their name first, then speaking. Staff members that want to add any discussion may call on the chair to speak, then stating their name. If the chair calls for any motions, the committee member will move and say their name. The second committee member will second and say their name. The chair will then state, may I have a roll call vote. Assistants will speak each committee member for their vote and record appropriately for the ETA. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. Our first piece of business is the Elementary Science Next Generation Science Standards Resource Contract. And I think we have Ms. Mashinda, Ms. Schumacher, and Mr. Cromwell to present and facilitate the discussion.
Thank you. This is Eric Cromwell. I'm the coordinator for elementary science. We're bringing to you JHO 71325. This contract is for a new elementary science next generation science standards resource. The vendor the committee has identified is Generation Genius. This will create a 5-year spending authority with a maximum dollar figure of $372,315, with an annual subscription for 115 schools in K-5 at $74,463, and that works out to a cost per student of $1.53. This contract will also be evaluated annually for its effectiveness. Next slide. So why do we need this resource? Well, we've been in the Next Gens for the last 10 years, but in that time, we have not seen a cultural shift in how science is taught. And the Next Gens have really changed how science has to be taught because, as the quote here says, it's not just about what you know, it's what you can do with what you know. If you could click for the animation, please. So now the next generation science standards have put a greater emphasis on the doing component or the practices, as well as those big ideas in science we call the cross-cutting concepts. And it is those that we are trying to really emphasize in instruction. We are still seeing teachers teach as they were taught, and we want to shift that with these resources. This will also have a tremendous impact on our students as well, given that the resource centers them those practices and cross-cutting concepts as part of the resource that we have evaluated at this point. Next slide. So what is it? It is an online platform engaging students with videos. There are additional supplementary resources that teachers can download that are PDFs. This is a resource also supported by our National Science Teaching Association. It will be a support to our locally created BCPS curriculum that is delivered by teachers. And it's the only platform that we have found that integrates all three dimensions of the next generation science standards together through action and language. Thank you. Next slide, please. So why do we need this? It is a resource that we really want to see that's going to really show that alignment to the next gens. It is very well done, and Dr. Jeff centered here is kind of this generation's Bill Nye. It is also something not just instructionally used, but also for professional learning purposes. We want to make sure our teachers understand the complexities of the standards and are able to implement all three of the dimensions that are required components of the standards. This is also something we're looking to support student reteaching and re-engagement opportunities, particularly with the scope of our state assessment being 3 years in elementary. We want to make sure students have the opportunity to review concepts prior to our state assessment. Next slide. So how are we going to monitor implementation? So there are two levels we're looking at. One is looking at teacher professional learning courses and also instructional use. So for the teacher professional learning, we're going to look at building courses within Schoology, where teachers will actually review the videos and other content to look for and listen for how those practices and cross-cutting concepts actually are integrated as part of daily instruction to really change the language they're using there as well. This will include learning checks to make sure that we know they have implemented those professional learning courses and that they're ready to teach instruction when those units come up. From an instructional use standpoint, all of our units now are housed in Google, and so we're able to keep track of when each resource is used, and this graph shown here is actually based on a specific lesson that is used, so we have an idea of when implementation occurs, and as all of the Generation Genius resources are embedded in the curriculum, we'll know when those are being used. Also, with integration into Schoology, there are reports that are generated that at an item level we'll be able to keep track of what's going on in terms of the use. We really want to maximize this product because it's very much set up so that each standard is aligned to a specific resource, which is a huge boom for us. Next slide. I believe that's it for, and are there any questions?
So board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Cromwell?
Ms. Dominowski, I have some questions.
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Seminowski.
I'm sorry if you said this and I missed it, but is this replacing another contract that is ending or that we're no longer fulfilling?
Yes, it is. We are no longer using Discovery Education as one of our main curricular components.
And it sounds like all of this is online, or are there consumable products?
There are no consumables. It's all online. The additional PDFs that are available are downloadable by teachers.
And this will replace all elementary science?
It's a resource to support our existing curriculum. It's not a curriculum in and of itself.
And is it the same cost-wise as what it's replacing, or is it more or less?
Less.
It's less.
Substantially less.
Substantially less, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Hi, this is Mrs. Stileski.
Go ahead, Ms. Stileski.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. Was there any kind of, I know this is not a full curriculum, but was there any kind of pilot or any kind of feedback that you guys have received from teachers regarding this?
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
we have as part of the adoption process, we have a committee that reviews all the contents. We had several vendors, and after review, the committee said that this was one of the better products that they had looked at. Found it very easy to use and very well aligned to the standards they're anxious to get into and start using it.
Great, thank you. And then just one other question in terms of the PDFs that are downloadable, will there be one, obviously paper copies for students that prefer paper versus digital, and then
Yes.
does this addendum to the curriculum have the science experiments, manipulatives, hands-on learning that would match best practices? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The PDFs are downloadable and printable. They are also readable online as just within the web page itself. So the teachers aren't actually required to download those documents if they don't need to, but they are printable that way. In terms that there are experiments that are shown in the videos, but they are not required by teachers to use. Our curriculum and the kits that we supply to teachers and are maintained by schools are already built in based on the curriculum that we have developed locally.
Great, thank you very much.
Mr. Cromwell, I had one question. On the slide that showed usage, was that
Yes.
just a visual or was it actual usage data?
That was actual usage data based on one item from, and I forget what unit it was that I pulled it from, but it's a fairly new set of analytics that's been added and that we've been capitalizing on to keep track of implementation across the board and also making sure that it fits within the prescribed time frames that we've laid out.
Because I noticed that there was like a spike for February, the week of February 2nd.
Yeah.
Well, what would explain that spike for 1 week? Or was it
Well,
the
that
item you
spike-
pulled?
Remember, that is a single lesson resource. So for that one resource, that's how many viewers there were within that time frame. So if I go back and look at, okay, so this was our second grade unit and our second marking period, actually third marking period unit, where should teachers be at this point? Well, that spike is probably just about right for when implementation for that specific lesson is supposed to occur.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay, so this is a contract, correct? So we do need a vote, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
please.
Okay, so may I have a motion to approve the elementary science next generation science standards resource contract?
So moved, Stileski.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Chickakaloo.
Thank you. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Chickakaloo,
Yes.
Ms. Dominowski,
Yes.
Ms. Stileski,
Yes.
Ms. Lichter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Contract moves forward to the contract committee. Thank you for that. Next, we're going to discuss the secondary
Thank you.
reading and intervention contract. Dr. Kraft, Ms. Wicks, and Ms. Skosevich will present and facilitate the discussion. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Ms. Wicks is actually out on vacation, so Ms. Goisevich and I will be leading this presentation, and I'm actually going to turn it right over to Ms. Goisevich to start us off. So next
Thank
slide,
you.
please.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us here today. So we are bringing forward the contract for language comprehension and wanted to first start by sharing our stakeholder process with you. So per Rule 6002, we must have representatives from all of the following categories. And for this particular RFI process that occurred over the winter through spring, we actually had participation from 22 reviewers and met and exceeded that representation requirement. So you can see on the screen here, we had representatives from a variety of offices, representatives from a variety of schools and a variety of positions, and then representatives from our community stakeholder groups as well. Next slide, please. And then these are the products that were reviewed as part of this process. So you will see that HMH Read 180 and Savis's ILET are the top two based on the reviews of our 22 stakeholders that averaged for Read 180 a score of 41 out of 45, and for Savis's ILET averaging a score of 40 out of 45. So very close in what they were showing us. Next slide, please.
So I'm going to review some data, and I'm not going to take a lot of time with it. This is data that we showed you last time when we were talking about meeting the needs of our learners. But we wanted to show you, because these two products did still rise to the top of the evaluation process, what you see on this slide is the grade level equivalent of beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year testing. And so what you're seeing over time is, and of course we don't have our end of year testing yet for this year, but you are seeing that we are about getting 2 years of growth in each year, which is what we want to do with a reading intervention. Is we want to accelerate the growth. So a typical growth would be a year for a student. These are students that have not been making a year of progress per year, which is why they are behind. So every time we can double that growth, that will get them out of literacy intervention that much quicker. Next slide, please. And so the next two slides are our map data. The reason we do not have the historical trend data like you see in the previous slide is that over the 5 years we've had Read 180, we've actually had 3 different assessments. And so I wouldn't be able to stack them up in the same way. And so when we first started with Read 180, they were using the Scholastic Reading Inventory. After that point, they moved to the growth measure. And then this past year, we switched to MAP. And so what you see is the growth based on where they are in relation to how much we need them to grow to be on grade level. Since many of our students are significantly below grade level, while this graph might look like students are growing, they are growing, but if you have a student that is in 10th grade and they're reading at a 6th grade level, then they need to grow a lot. Now, we don't expect them to grow 4 years in 1 year. So what happens is it looks like, oh, they're below growth. Well, they're below growth because we don't expect that type of growth. What we see in our schools that are implementing with Fidelity is we see even stronger growth data. So again, this is our middle school. And if you go to the next slide, we can look at our high school data. And so we have actually been really encouraged by the schools that are using it with Fidelity, that they are getting results that are moving students in some cases out of intervention, and in some cases just closing that gap a little bit more. Additionally, you will hear from Ms. Gojsevich in a few slides about all of the different ways that we have provided professional learning to really ensure that students are getting placed appropriately and that teachers have what they need to implement the program with integrity. Next slide, please.
So like Dr. Kraft mentioned, we see in areas where there is fidelity of implementation, higher growth for our students. And over the course of this year and last year as well, and then thinking ahead to next year, here are the many ways that we have supported fidelity of implementation. So we have district opportunities, school level opportunities, and classroom teacher opportunities. So starting with those district opportunities, we have provided system-wide PD and training, and that has been ongoing throughout the course of the school year. So really working with our leaders, our educators, to make sure that they have those overarching views of program implementation. We have also addressed fidelity of implementation at our department chair meetings at the secondary level. So knowing that our department chairs are really going to be able to continue leading the work in their schoolhouses, really working with them to ensure that they understand fidelity of implementation, what we should see, what we should hear in a classroom that's focused on language comprehension intervention. And then we've also provided professional learning for principals and assistant principals where we've been able to share data. We've shared data at multiple points throughout the year so that we could get a sense of what are those district-wide trends, what are the trends that we see in the school, and how can we work together, and how can we really partner to continue improving fidelity of implementation across our school system. We've had a variety of school-level opportunities, so we offer data meetings at multiple points throughout the year, but it's not just those structured data meetings that we offer. Our reading intervention specialist, in coordination with school leaders, continues to share data, and we do ongoing progress monitoring. We also visit our schools to see this in action. We bring instructional walkthroughs so that we can go in, we can see what this is looking like across the system. And then really exciting this year, as we shared maybe at our last curriculum meeting, was the demonstration classroom. So this year we have 2 demonstration classrooms occurring for intervention, and we had one focused on language comprehension, and then we have one focused on words, phonics fluency. So we're really excited about those opportunities so that we can invite others from across the school system to come in to see what a classroom can and should look like when it comes to intervention. And then we have a variety of classroom teacher opportunities. So we have online learning modules, and sometimes that's provided by the vendor, sometimes that's provided by our team, sometimes that's been provided by our teacher leaders in the schools. We have ongoing drop-in sessions, and those are really specific to the programs that we are supporting. So really focusing on how we can support the different aspects of those programs and really working with our teachers and our students to ensure that we are seeing growth. And then we have a variety of vendor-led coaching opportunities as well, where our vendor is able to come in to partner with our schools and our teachers. Sometimes they do model lessons, sometimes they provide coaching feedback, but the ultimate goal, again, is to improve fidelity of implementation across the district. Next slide, please. And so we also just wanted to share the cost differential so you can see the differences for ILET and Read 180. For ILET, this includes the cost of that online license for students, and you can see the differences for 1, 3, 5, and 6 years. And then for Read 180, this includes the online license as well as the consumables that students would use in the classroom. Next slide, please.
And so based on our review outcomes and feedback, we've outlined specific next steps to strengthen reading intervention across the district. And we are really going to be making programmatic recommendations to schools based on this year's data. And based on that recommendation, for schools who will be implementing a different program in the fall, we will make sure that we coordinate spring 2025 classroom visits so that they can see the program in action. This summer, we will be providing Getting Started training for all teachers new to reading intervention programs. We are going to continue to expand access to online professional learning. And so in addition to what the vendor is providing, we're in the process of creating some video modules internally to support teachers in the work that they need to do to implement the programs. We will continue to distribute classroom library sets to support the multi-modalities for student reading. So while there is an online component and in some cases there's a consumable, we also want students to have access to books in their hands. And finally, and this has been a very successful partnership, but we want to continue to strengthen and sustain implementation in secondary schools by working collaboratively with the Division of Schools. And so by working collaboratively with them, we really do believe that we are going to be able to sustain the implementation progress that we are starting to see and want to strengthen even further. Next slide, please. And so right now I will take any questions that you all have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Board members, questions?
This is board member, Ms. Dominowski. I have questions.
Go ahead, please.
Can you go back and explain to me again how we don't have the year-over-year comparison data for the
Yes,
Read 180?
Absolutely. And as they're navigating, I'll start talking, Ms. Dominowski. So I do have data. What I can't do is the same type of bar graph that I did with ILET, because ILET, the publisher started with grade and continued with grade. So you're really comparing apples to apples. With HMH Read 180, the vendor has changed the product that they use for assessment 3 times in the 5 years that we have been with them. So in the first year, they had a program assessment called the Scholastic Reading Inventory, and that provided a Lexile for us. In the next iteration, we had the growth measure, and they switched to RIT scores. And so you had a Lexile score and then a RIT score. And then this year, they switched to using MAP. And so I do have historical data, but it wouldn't line up on a bar graph. And I think you were going to flip back maybe somebody to that slide to go back and look at that graph. You wouldn't have that same graph of year over year with the same assessment using the same metric.
Okay, so we've had the Read 180 for 5 years, but it's not the same screener or assessment that was used
That's
each
correct.
year.
The publisher has changed it 3 times.
So that's not
And
something we have discretion with, Mr.
That's
Manassi, when we're
correct.
implementing the programs. The vendor identifies, so the publishing company identifies what the screener is. This vendor has made multiple changes. I think that's also part of why when we're looking at implementation and how do we really monitor this, that we're going to be making some really strategic recommendations for which schools might be using which products based on us being able to really calibrate some of that.
So and the other one, the eyelet used the same assessment across how long? We've had that one for 5 years as well.
Yes. So we've had both products for 5 years. The first year was a small scale pilot with just like a school or two. So 21-22 is when we really started collecting the data because we had multiple schools in terms of making sure that we were not using identifiable data because it was such a small data set in that first year and it wasn't even a full year. It was the spring of that year.
And the reasoning behind keeping both of them is
so in school. Thank you. It's such a good question, Ms. Dominowski. So we are seeing gains in both. What we are seeing is the bigger gains are happening in our schools using Read 180 when they are meeting the fidelity guidelines. So the number of minutes they are supposed to be on per session, the number of sessions they are supposed to have per week, and the number of segments they are supposed to complete by mid-year and end of year. We are seeing similar gains to what we see in our eyelet data. And so therefore, for our schools that are not implementing with that level of integrity, we are going to make some programmatic recommendations for them to actually look at adopting eyelet, which seems to be working for all the schools that are currently using eyelet in getting those level of gains. And so we do not want to take it away from the Read 180 schools where we're having that high fidelity and we are seeing the growth and we're seeing students exit out because they are hitting grade level benchmarks. And so we do have schools that are very successful. And it also makes it really difficult for teachers that, maybe they were one of our pilot schools and this is their 4th full year with it. And they have learned it. They have taken the time to figure out stations. Their rooms are set up in those rotations. They have a full command of it. We also don't want to change that because they are getting good results with their students. And so we want to think about the impact if we just wholesale switch. But we do agree that there are some schools that are not being as successful, and we think that eyelet will be a really good match.
would there just hypothetically, would there be a cost saving aspect to it if we decided to just go with one as opposed to two?
There isn't a pricing, like with some products, if you hit a certain threshold, a number of schools or number of licenses, you get a discounted rate. Most of the vendors on that are setting it up as a longevity rate decrease. So it's not, but you get the decreased cost when you sign a longer contract with them versus the number of students who are using it.
Correct.
So what I mean by that is one more expensive than the other? When I was looking at the numbers that you were showing us, it did look like the Read 180 was more expensive. Is that like overall or?
So Read 180 is more expensive, which is why the recommendation we are making is that we keep it in the schools where we're seeing that really strong positive progress. In schools where they are not getting the same type of growth that we're currently getting with eyelet, we are going to recommend that they move to eyelet, which will yield cost savings, and also kind of give a reboot, to like say like, okay, let's start from the beginning. What are the things that need to happen, and how can we move forward? The recommendation that we're making, knowing that we do have some schools that have been very committed and very diligent about their implementation of Read 180, and they have really moved their students forward.
Thank you. One last question. Do you know offhand about how many schools that are using it with the high fidelity and it's working well for them? How many schools and how many students that would be affected by it if we decided, hypothetically, like that would be affected if we didn't have it?
You mean if I pull the high fidelity schools?
Right.
Ms. Goisevich, I think the latest number I had was 8 schools. Is that the number that you had?
I was going to say over the course of the past several years, between 8 to 10 schools.
Yeah. And so, and I actually, if anybody has another question, Ms. Dominowski, I actually can pull up the enrollment really quick for those 8 to 10 schools. And I can get you an answer before we're even done, probably our questions.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, this is Ms. Stileski.
Hi.
Okay, should I ask my questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. And this is sort of a follow-up. There was a slide, and I don't have the slide number, that was talking about the schools that will be implementing the different program in the fall and the classroom visits in the spring for that. Is that those 8 to 10 schools that would be switching to the eyelet? I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
So right
I
now,
think
what
it's the flip flop, Ms.
Yes,
Stileski. 8 to 10 would remain with eyelet.
Okay,
And then those schools that are not remaining, or 8 to 10 would remain with Read 180,
Read
pardon
180.
me. And then the schools that are switching, we
Would-
would,
okay,
I think it's the next slide, Ms. Cox, working on making sure that we have those staff trained for the start of next year, and even facilitate a visit by either the reading teacher at the school, the teacher who is teaching it, or an administrator, so that they can see classroom setup. What does the structure look like? So the teaching environment, because sometimes it's nice to see what it should look like when you're getting ready to implement something.
okay. So that first bullet would be schools switching to the HMH 180. Okay, great, thank
Switching
you.
to eyelet from,
Eyelet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Wait,
Switching from HMH Read 180 to
To
eyelet.
Eyelet.
so
okay.
that they can see it in action, before they go to training, so that the training will actually stick better because they will have actually seen it in action. So then when they get the training, they can attach it to what they saw, in the classroom.
Okay. And that's great. And I know we're already kind of in mid-May. In terms of any class visits that have occurred so far, is there anything that you're seeing, positive or negative? Obviously, you guys feel this is the best recommendation, and I trust you, but just in terms of the classroom visits thus far, is there anything that has occurred that makes you additionally support the switch, or just things that you might want to tweak or do differently? Thank you.
Ms. Goisevich, do you want me to start, or do you want to start? I know we'll both speak to it.
I'm happy to start, Dr. Kraft. So what has been exciting to see as we've been able to visit our schools who are implementing eyelet, is the way that the teacher is able to work with individual students as students get what they need within that platform to address certain skills, different areas, and the teacher is able to provide that feedback for students in real time. And so our hope and part of that fidelity piece is encouraging the monitoring of what students are doing, where they're being successful, where there's areas of growth, and really working collaboratively with individual students to make sure that they're able to continue improving and growing. Dr. Kraft?
And so what I would say is that we have put a lot of effort in trying to get everyone to implementation integrity. And so you heard a variety of things. Ms. Goisevich spoke to that slide. That was the one with the arrows and the circle about district, school level, and classroom opportunities. And so we really have we've done data meetings. We have, this year we have the demonstration classroom. We have done coaching from our specialists. We've done coaching from the vendor. And what I would say is that we are still just not getting the same results that we're getting with ILET. And so the data that you saw on the slide with that bar graph, those include high and low fidelity schools, but we're still seeing the growth. And so we want to try something different in those schools where we have tried multiple different things and we just haven't been able to hit the stride with it. And so, some of what we see in the classroom, we immediately respond to. So if they're not implementing stations, we help them, work towards that. If they're not using the data, if they're not collecting exit tickets, if they're not doing student coaching, if they're, if the kids aren't getting on the app, we troubleshoot all of that. However, this isn't a brand new implementation. In fact, what research shows us is by year 3 is really where you hit your stride with a new program. And research plays out over multiple, not only in the schoolhouse, but in business world, that year 3 is really the sweet spot. We've passed year 3 and we have not been able to move it in the way that we would have hoped. And at the same time, we don't want to penalize schools that have figured it out and they are moving their kids and they are being very successful. And so that's why we thought this would be a happy medium to be able to honor the hard work that there are schools that have invested the time in, that have done the professional learning, that have done the coaching, and their students are being successful. At the same time, realizing some cost savings, and also the data is looking good with ILET. And so we felt like instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, that this would be the medium approach to support teachers in their learning and the students that are benefiting from it, while helping move some of our other schools that just haven't been able to get the same traction.
Great. Thank you so much for that, for clarifying all of that. And it really sounds like you all have done your due diligence to really dig deeper into supporting reading. And I thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, this is Board Member Chikekulu. I had a few questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, firstly. And so I was wondering what happens when a student doesn't meet the MAP cut scores, but a teacher might still see a strong need for intervention? Like, is there flexibility for teacher referrals to still get them in high intervention programs?
I love that question so much. So thank you for asking it. We actually use an approach where we ask teachers to triangulate data. And so we ask them to use a minimum of 3 data sources. And so one certainly can be MAP. Right. And we do expect them to use that. And that is the product that we kind of had historically in BCPS and now, of course, is being used with Read 180. We actually also ask them to look at CBAs. We ask them to look at English teacher recommendations. So what you were just saying, but the teacher sees it, right? In addition to, depending on what grade level they're in. So when they're in high school, we look at PSAT. We look at a variety of data sources. We really want to see this complete picture of the student. And this actually, your question dovetails with what we were talking about last month at Curriculum Committee about that intervention database that we have. So not only are we now tracking it in focus, so there is a historical place that a teacher can go and see what a student has had in the past, but also they can look at the data associated with it. So now I don't just see, oh, they were in Read 180. I can be like, wow, they were in Read 180 and look how much they grew in a year. Or they used, a different program and there wasn't growth. So let's not do that one again. Let's try something else. And so absolutely, we want to use multiple data points when we make a decision. And we do not want to use any one data point to determine a student's placement or exiting from an intervention.
Thank you so much. That was a very thorough explanation. And related to that, I was wondering, how do we support students who transfer mid-year? Do they get reassessed, or is there a way to pick up on where their intervention left off if a neighboring school system doesn't use the same interventions as us?
So we
Yeah,
ahead.
go Ms. Boycevich, go.
No, I was going to start with, we do offer entry-level assessments. And I think, though, to Dr. Kraft's point, we also do want to look at multiple data points for that student and thinking about where that student's come from, other courses that student's been enrolled in, to really ensure that as the student transitions with us for BCPS, so that student gets what they need to be successful. So there is the opportunity to, if a student was an intervention in a different district, for them to come in and to still be assessed through a variety of we have different diagnostic measures to make sure that we're placing students where they should be. And again, using those multiple data points.
Thank you for your response. And on the stakeholder side, I was saw that we have such a broad group, and I was wondering if any students or recent graduates or anyone was consulted as a part of the feedback loop, especially around engagement.
A great question. So we regularly do have conversations with our students. And in the past, not in this one, but in the past, we've even sometimes had them on the committee for review. It just depends on the timing and if there's students available. This particular one, it takes a very long time. This one particularly started in the summer. But we are also looking for feedback in how they engage. And so one of my, and Ms. Goisevich can tell you, almost always when I walk into a classroom, I mean, not in the middle of a teacher talking, but I'm like, what are you reading and do you enjoy it? Because it's really important. Part of reading is engagement and motivation. And so one of the things, so talking about ILET, one of the things I hear over and over is how much they like the novels that are in the program. And so, and I can even tell you one of them because I've heard it from the students so much. They love Accidental Love by Gary Soto because they told me that because I've asked that question so much. And so, I think that we continue to try to serve our students in the best possible way, which, again, are, small conversations. Sometimes we do focus groups. We do a variety of things to really try. And I know that the other thing I want to tell you is we actually have student panels sometimes. So at the beginning of our reading intervention trainings, we think it's really always important to center the students. So we will invite students that have exited out of reading intervention to come be on a panel for our teachers and talk about what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And in that moment, not only can we hear instructional strategies that work for them, the classroom climate that worked for them, but I will tell you, we also hear about the program and how it did or did not meet their needs. And so all of that helps inform what we do. But I want to take all the space, Ms. Goisevich, and you can absolutely add in some more.
What has been really exciting this year with our demo classrooms is we've had the opportunity to go in, and I've been in many of those classrooms, to go in and really talk to the students. Dr. Kraft mentioned asking what they're doing, but also, getting a sense of what do they really need in order to continue growing? What are some areas of strength of that program? What are some areas of growth? And then how can we work together as a system to make sure that we're meeting the needs of individual learners? So that's been one of the biggest blessings of the demo classrooms, is really getting to get in and hear feedback from students on what's been going well. We've been able to go into many classrooms to see where teachers are able to set goals for their learners. And those goals, a lot of them communicate with guardians, with parents, to make sure that everybody has a sense of what a student is working toward. So that's been really exciting to see as well. And we continue to think about how we can support the work that the teachers are doing in the buildings to continue moving students forward. So I really appreciate you bringing up the student piece of that. We continuously try to get student feedback throughout many of our different processes. So thank you.
So thank you so much.
Oh, yes, Ms. Chigilikovu, go ahead.
I'm sorry, no, thank you for your response. And I just had a follow-up. I'm wondering, moving forward, is there any opportunity to just build a more standardized way to capture student feedback on these interventions? I also want to know, what do you think? You said students aren't always available at the time. So what do you think have been the biggest barriers to getting student feedback outside of being in the classroom or just engaging with them directly, just so that way, they are also listed on the slide in terms of community stakeholder feedback?
Yeah, that's a great question. And certainly in reflecting on our process, we really always want to include the student because And I remember, and actually I will talk about Read 180 for a minute. And so when I was in a different district and I was first looking at it, we weren't implementing it, but I was already teaching. And I had brought the books to my teacher desk and they were just sitting on the desk. And I'm teaching my, whatever. And the kids kept coming over to the desk and pulling the books off my desk, which I was like so happy about, because that one of them like looked at me like, are you going to yell at me? And I'm like, no, take another one. And that told me a lot in that moment about that they were finding books that they were interested enough to come over to my teacher desk and take it off, right? And I say that to say, I know that is a long way to say that we absolutely have to figure out ways that we have students involved. And one of the things that has been a barrier has been the evaluation process is actually really, really long of all the pieces you need to do. So one of the things that we have been considering, and we just have to actually, and I'm glad you brought it up, talk to purchasing a little bit more about like what we really want to know from the student's perspective is like, are these engaging materials? Would you want to interact with these? So can they participate and have a slightly different rubric? And so I think those are some of the things, and I'm so glad you brought it back up today, because it's kind of been in the back of our mind to see what options we have. But it's a real each evaluation, and I don't know if we can flip back to the screen where we had the finalist. Each evaluation takes about an hour to 2 hours, depending on the length of the evaluation rubric. And so when you talk about barriers, if there were four, I can't remember if there were 4 or 5 products. Thank you. When you look at that list of things and then asking the student to spend 10 hours going through reading materials to do the rubrics, I think that that's a barrier. And so I think what we would like to figure out is how do we include their voice, but in a way that we capture what we really need without unduly burdening them by keeping them longer than they need to do to complete, to give their input. So I know that's not a complete answer, but let's put it this way. We are going to continue to work on that because we always want the student voice in the center of what we do.
Really helpful feedback for us.
So thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So just thank you for naming that. And like just off bat, I was just wondering maybe even throughout their curriculum, if there could be like low lift qualitative options. So a reflective prompt or a short survey that just gives students a chance to know. Like I'm thinking even from a student's perspective, like asking to assess an entire curriculum is definitely overwhelming, or an entire platform can be overwhelming, but just maybe ways to sprinkle it throughout the year. However, I know this is a lot of work to do on its own. And I think for my last question, I was just wondering, you were mentioning coaching and walkthroughs, and what's the feedback loop for teachers after those visits? Do they receive actionable steps to follow up and like different ways for support? Or is it just kind of continuous support throughout the year?
I'm going to let Ms. Gojcevic start, and then I'll add anything after that.
So always aim to provide that actionable feedback. Sometimes the walkthroughs have been for the purpose of considering district-wide trends to inform our PDs that we're offering, and so it's come in the form of PDs. Sometimes the instructional walkthroughs and classroom visits have been that direct coaching support and feedback in the moment, so the very next day when we see our students, we can make this adjustment to better that learning environment. So it really depends on the purpose of that walkthrough, but all classroom visits have been intended for really improving the classroom instruction and really thinking about how we can collaborate with our schools to continue working to implement with fidelity.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry. You just reminded me of one last question, one actual last question. And just for the online learning modules that you guys are building internally, are those on demand or are they facilitated? And will they go towards PD hours at all, or would that just be like an independent endeavor almost?
As part of the ongoing professional learning that we had on that slide. So we currently have online modules, and some of the vendors offer those online modules to provide professional learning. We also have some district created ones as well, so that teachers can continue going in, get a refresher where needed, and really explore what they need to based on the feedback. And so those live in a couple of different places. So we have them through the vendor for some of the programs. We also have those as ones that have been created by the district or even some of our teacher leaders in our school systems, so that people can go back and really get what they need for those. And my understanding, and Dr. Kraft, if this is incorrect, thinking about people getting the professional learning credits moving forward, professional learning that teachers do to better their understanding of these programs can absolutely work toward that.
Thank you so much for answering all of my questions.
We are happy to.
Thank you. My question, most of mine have been answered, but logistically, is this going through as one contract or two? Like one for iReady and one for Read 180 and one for iLit.
It's going, oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Dr. Rush.
No, got it. You got it, Dr. DiDonato.
Yeah, so it's going through similarly to some of the others where there's multiple vendors on a contract. So it is as a
Package.
package essentially. And then there will be an individual contract to the vendor for what is specifically ordered like from them. So it's a totality of a secondary reading intervention
Okay.
contract with these two multiple vendors selected, and then the procurement would be with just that individual vendor for
Okay.
however many licenses we were purchasing or materials from them.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I've heard a lot about schools which they would use based on fidelity and results. Is there, the student though, is there a difference for what type of student or how far below grade level they're reading that would benefit from one or the other, or they both meet the same population of needs?
Great question. They are both tier 2. Well, they can actually both be tier 2 or tier 3, but they both fall under language comprehension. So it actually is the same profile, which is why we've had both in the district, because they actually complement each other. You could use either or to address that same student that has language comprehension needs.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the secondary reading intervention contract?
I'm sorry, real quick,
Ms.
Lister.
Dominowski, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought were you able
Yeah.
to get that?
Yes,
Anderson.
it's around 550 students.
And just for the 8 schools, or 10 schools that are using this with fidelity and having success and want to continue using it, are there additional schools besides those that were included in that graphic that you showed us about?
That graphic is the entire district. We did not break out the high fidelity schools.
I just want to make sure it wasn't, okay.
Yeah, it's all of the schools.
It's all of them. And then I love all the talk about, including more student voices and bringing that into it. I think it's an important element. Obviously, if our students aren't engaged or don't want to read the materials, that they're not going to learn all what they need to learn. But I also think that the ultimate student voice is the outcome that the students are getting and the way that they're achieving. So I don't think that should be lost in when we're evaluating these. So that's all. I just wanted to point that out there. And Tread, I don't want to give you guys too much work as far as that is a lot of work to have those students fill out all those questionnaires, and you said it took hours to go through all that, and they have a lot of testing just to evaluate how they are for MAP or with MCAPs. So I think the main thing we should focus on when it comes to our students, additionally, that they are enjoying the work, but also that they are succeeding and getting out of it what needs to be getting out of, so that they can grow to the next grade level and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the secondary reading intervention contract?
So moved, Chike Kalu.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Stileski.
Thank you. Ms. Cox, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Chike Kalu,
Yes.
Ms. Dominowski,
Yes.
Ms. Stileski,
Yes.
Ms. Lichter.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting to the team. Our third contract is the Renaissance Star Assessment Contract. And Mr. Connolly and Dr. DiDonato will be presenting this. And just as a kind of reminder, this contract was slated to be approved at the board meeting last Tuesday, but based on some questions we were getting, the superintendent did pull it and brought it to our committee, so some of those questions could be asked. So, Mr. Connolly, welcome to Curriculum Committee.
Thank you so much and good afternoon. So today we're going to be talking about JHO 71125, the core curriculum enhancements. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this is aligned with our academic achievement, especially with the priorities of English language arts and mathematics, but as well as looking at student progress over time and growth with a focus on priority areas for multilingual learners and special education. As you can see with the graphic for fast forward, that we have different entry points along the student's continuum of pathway to success for college, career, and community readiness. And in each of these pathways, we're looking at ways to identify how students are performing, both with their achievement and their growth, and then looking at that over time. Next slide, please. The STAR reading and math assessments is a system-wide group of assessments given 3 times a year. It's computer-based adaptive testing, and it's approximately 25 minutes to complete, which is about half the time of our current product that we're using. In addition to testing 3 times a year, it also has the opportunity to be used as a screener for students prior to, let's say, 504 meetings or IEP meetings or their multilingual learner update meetings. In addition to that, it could also be used for students that are new to Baltimore County Public Schools or maybe came in enrollment after the window of testing that we did for census. So it's very flexible and very quick, and it's done in the classroom as part of the instructional program. Additionally, it meets the reading and math screening assessment requirements of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, and the MSDE Literacy Plan, and the MSDE Math Policy. Progress monitoring is a part of the STAR reading and math assessments for student growth in reading and math. We do have the ability to utilize STAR reading and math assessments with our kindergarten students and early childhood students because the state of Maryland has purchased that contract already. So there's a nice continuity from being able to use the early learning assessment with our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds to the KRA with our kindergarten students, and then transitioning that to grades 1 through 12 for reading and math across BCPS. Similar to what we're using presently, student achievement and growth are reported by scale score, percentile rank, Lexile, and student growth percentile. And what that means is the student growth percentile is looking at 2 test administrations and how the student performed compared to their peers on the first test compared to those same peers on their second test. So if a student has a growth percentile that's above 50%, then they outperformed 50% of the students that were performing like them or in a similar way on the first assessment compared to the second assessment. It also provides instructional insights, which is a very important new part of the STAR reading and math assessments compared to what we presently have available to us, because it's very specific for grade level and essential skills embedded within standards. It provides those instructional insights and customizes standards-based reteaching for teachers so that they can see quickly and easily within one student, a group of students, or across their class, what are the standards where my students are doing well, and what are the standards where my students need additional responsive instruction. There are individual student achievement and growth reports available to parents and caregivers. And, we also utilize those reports for things when we're looking at a variety of items of evidence, such as GT screening or looking at different programs. This will serve as one data source for a comprehensive review of student performance and achievement. And as mentioned previously, MSDE uses aligned assessments for early childhood and kindergarten students. Next slide, please. So contract details. The current student growth assessment contract expires on July 31st, 2025. This proposed contract is a 25-month term of contract with an end date of 7/31/27. Each year is an annual contract renewal, which means that we will provide information to the Board of Education for notification and approval on an annual basis if we choose to extend this contract to the next year. There's a maximum 2-year contract spending authority of $1,400,214. And for grades 1 through 12 for both reading and math combined, the cost is $8.92 per student, which is an annual savings of over $400,000 for comparable services from the current provider. Next slide, please. So as stated at the opening, this was with Building and Contracts Committee on 5.5 and approved, went to the Board of Education and back for the Curriculum Committee to have some opportunities for us to further engage in questions and comments. Next steps are the Building and Contracts Committee on 6/9/25 and the BOE on 6/10/25. At this time, if there's any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly, for that. Questions from board members? Ms. Dominowski, do you have any questions for this one?
I do. I didn't want to.
I know. I called on you. No worry. I called on you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to be clear, is this the contract that this will be replacing is the MAP test?
That's correct.
Were teachers consulted about this? I know from just the few teachers I've spoken to that they actually prefer the MAP test, even to like the MCAP, which I know is more of a state standard that we have to do. But were teachers consulted about this, or was there a survey done, or were they brought in?
I'll ask Dr. DiDonato to weigh in, but there's actually been a pilot that's been ongoing with 3rd grade, 5th grade, and Algebra 1. And we've gotten a lot of feedback through that pilot for STAR Math.
Yeah, so I will actually even turn over to Ms. Machinda and Ms. Greenberg. We did do a pilot with, excuse me, with STAR Math, really trying to get better diagnostic information about our students with math, also understanding, you know, some of the updates with the math policy of things that we needed to put in place. So we did take that opportunity to pilot it, and we had received very positive feedback about it. The ease of assessment was one of the factors, and the amount of time that it took to administer the assessment. With MAP testing, the length of the test as well as the structure of the time frame needed required scheduling changes and lots of different things at some of the levels of for students. And this could be administered within the math block, or in, you know, when we add ELA within the ELA block. And so scheduling wise for the assessment, the feedback we've received was much easier to administer and to schedule. Cassandra or Cindy, is there anything else you wanted to add as far as feedback we've received about the assessment specifically?
No, I think you have covered it. I think one of the additional pieces is the participation has shown that teachers are finding an ease of use. So the first round of the assessment, we had over 16,000 students participate. And then we, in our second round, are just at over 13,000. That's the last time I looked. So Ms. Greenberg may have a new number, but the last time I looked in the second, about 13,000 of those same students who have engaged in the assessment again, and then teachers using those data reports to really see where they can make an impact on instruction between assessment 1 and assessment 2 has also been good feedback that we've received from both teachers and building leaders. Ms. Greenberg?
And I just do want to add on to that, the ease of getting feedback for the instructional program is one of the most positive feedback I've gotten, as far as I can turn right around and look at the standards and address individually where the students may need additional assistance or acceleration.
Thank you.
Mr. You have more, Mr. Dominowski?
Yes, I do.
Go.
Sorry. So Amira, correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't Amira have an assessment tool built into it? Is that one not aligned with standards?
So, Ms. Dominowski, the Amira assessment is about developing reading skills, where the STAR assessment looks across more components of reading to include comprehension across different grade levels. So Amira has a very specific purpose, and it does a great job with what it's supposed to assess, but it doesn't provide that level of comprehensive detail across content standards.
So it couldn't be a replacement for on the ELA side, is what you're saying. It can't be used to measure. It can be a measurement assessment for everything that is comprehensive for the STAR or for the MAP. It doesn't do the same.
That's correct, especially as students get older.
Okay. And then lastly, is there, since teachers are already aligned with preparing for MAP, what is going to be the, professional, is there additional professional development that teachers are going to have to go through to get students prepared, or additional, I don't know, lessons, training, practices for the students to prepare for STAR, or is it more involved in their everyday curriculum where it won't affect their, everyday curriculum, I guess?
I think a
So I'm gonna-
wonderful example here is to talk again about the pilot program and how teachers were trained and the ease of implementation.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm going to turn that right over to Ms. Greenberg, who did a great job rolling that out, just with a variety of professional development modules that we did. So I will turn it right over to her before I talk through that.
So we were able to have a number of webinars available for the teachers, and we also were able to create a very straightforward manual for the teacher, the testing manual essentially for the teachers. As far as the students accessing it, it is a direct app through the Microsoft Apps portal. They log right in, they're rostered by teacher. There is a 2 little questions, I believe, that they get at the beginning, just help them orient them to, where to click and where the tools are, and then they're off. It's very intuitive and very straightforward for both the teachers and the students.
Thank you for that. Just lastly, does the STAR cover all the aspects that are required by the Ready to Read Act?
Yes, it does. So the STAR early literacy assessment, which is what MSD selected for kindergarten, does have that all of the
Yes.
necessary components. That one of the questions that sort of floated out there was, does it include the rapid naming? It does. It's in a subtest called the CBM. The CBM has lots of different little 1-minute mini assessments. So the RAN is part of that, and MSD is administering that as part of the KRA early literacy, and that will be part of our assessment suite also.
Will that make it the assessments longer than 25 minutes to add those extra elements in?
No, those elements are about 1 minute. So in talking with the vendor, especially at first and second grade, the entire assessment window should be somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes as students, because it is a adaptive test. As students get into higher skill levels, at which point we probably wouldn't be doing for a 4th or 5th grader unless there was a concern. Some of those other mini 1-minute assessments could be up to 30-35 minutes. So, but again, substantially shorter than the MAP assessment in either scenario.
Okay, thank you for answering all those questions.
You're so welcome.
Other questions from board members? Okay, my only question, I think you answered it, but I just want to make sure I understand. When you keep saying that there's MSDE aligned for the early childhood, is it the STAR assessment for early childhood, or it's another assessment? Because we're not saying same one. We keep saying aligned assessment.
That's correct.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
They say yes, that is correct. So STAR Renaissance has the contract for the early learning assessment, which is MSDE, and it's part of their STAR platform. They also have the contract for the kindergarten readiness assessment, or KRA, which is used for our 5-year-olds. So the reporting, the use of data, the standards-based aspects, all of that will be consistent for our kids and for our teachers. And so as we roll out professional learning and professional development, it's not just isolated to a certain grade level or a certain group of teachers. There's learning that the entire school can embrace and work towards and utilize as part of their professional learning communities and ongoing progress monitoring, as well as conversations with families and program planning for students.
And then therefore, if a child transfers into our system from another LEA and they're in that early childhood category, they will have had that STAR assessment. So all of the LEAs are using that across the state.
That's correct.
That's correct. And then as students are older and they're experiencing mobility, we can screen at any time with STAR reading and STAR math, and again have a similar type of data reporting.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from board members? May I have a motion to approve the Renaissance Star Assessment Contract as presented?
So moved, Chike Kalu.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Dominowski.
Thank you. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Chike Kalu,
Yes.
Ms. Dominowski,
Yes.
Ms. Talowski,
Yes.
Ms. Lichter.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The last item, and I know we are kind of pressed a little bit for time with people having end of the year events. So our last presentation is consideration of the course changes for 25 to 26, and I'll call Ms. DiDonato to go through that.
Sorry about that. I should unmute first.
I mean,
Okay,
Dr.
so
DiDonato, sorry, Dr.
that's okay. So annually, we provide an update to the board with regards to new courses, revisions to courses, and courses that are being discontinued. This occurs through the phase form process, and this is where the curricular offices have a process by which they propose new courses, identify those changes. For this upcoming year, for the 25-26 school year, one thing that you're going to see is a lot of course lists listed. It does not mean we're eliminating a whole bunch of courses. A lot of these courses have actually not been offered for a really long time, but our course catalog was not updated. So our digital course catalog is kept in our student information system, which is Focus. And in there, all the courses are listed. There's a process for deactivating them over a period of time once it gets approved by the board. However, some technical processes weren't happening on a consistent basis. Sometimes there were titles that we had lots of different versions of courses, so there were duplications where some might have been eliminated, but others hadn't. And so we really took an opportunity this year with the transition to the half credit, the 2 half credit parts for a full credit course, to really go through the entire course catalog, clean it up, really evaluate every course, which course was sitting in there. So it was listed, but maybe we actually didn't teach it and maybe there wasn't content associated with it. Then that needed to be deactivated. And then which courses did we really need to look at and maybe change to something different? And at that same time, also look at changing the course title so that it might be more reflective of the actual course content. Next slide. So new course codes and additions. So there's a couple reasons why we'd have new courses. So one of the things that we did is we had identified previously some courses that were used to identify reading interventions. What we did was we addressed those titlings so you can actually see what on a student's schedule, what reading intervention they're receiving as we move in the 25-26 school year, because the course are actually named with the intervention that the student's receiving. We also had some additional AP course offerings, as well as in the previous curriculum committee and board meeting where you heard about our advanced pathways for our world language programs. We had to add those courses, as well as the curriculum that you approved for us to do so. We also looked at our students, our multilingual learners, and really looking at, there was some language titling. So instead of using the word ESOL course, ESOL grade 1, ESOL grade 2, we are using English language development. So we looked at updating some nomenclature also with regards to the names for our courses. We also looked at our students who are working towards their certificate of completion. So our students who are in our FALS and CALS program who might be working on the alternate framework. What we really wanted to do was make sure that their transcripts also showed courses that they were taking. Previously, some of the students might look like they were taking the same math class repeatedly over time. They weren't doing that. They were getting different math along the way, but we only had a single course code that we were using. So we've really updated that again to show the progression of what students are learning along the way, as well as updating our pre-kindergarten course alignment as you know, we've moved very rapidly from our half-day pre-kindergarten programs to full day. Not all of them. We still have half-day programs. But with that also comes that our pre-kindergarten students are going to our related area classes, our special area classes, making sure that we were clearly defining the courses that our pre-kindergarten students are taking. Next slide. So the next few slides give you an overview of the new courses and titling that happened. And then there is a supplemental document that will be shared tomorrow with the board that has the list of all the deactivated courses that align with this. So we previously had critical reading was our reading course. However, now it's critical reading, Read 180, high school level, critical reading, ILET high school level, critical reading, visualize and verbalize high school level. So what we tried to do was really provide clarity of what courses students are taking, which is actually really, really important when we're looking at just someone who, when a student transfers, or for information for parents and families and guardians. With regards to early childhood, and again, it's not to go through every single one, you can see the list of early childhood courses that's really related to the students we're going to the special area classes. We've now clearly defined so they can actually be scheduled into it. So again, we can see the full compilation of everything that our young learners are doing. And that also allows us for our progress reports to clearly define their progress in those areas, and for us to align standards that they're working on within those courses so that they can, we can provide that feedback to families. The world language column, you see the multiple level 5 courses that have been added, and that really is to help our students be better prepared for AP courses if they need that other language course before taking those AP courses. We had the addition of some applied engineering classes at the middle school level. The AP pre-calculus, we had a pre-calculus course that has been offered in high school. However, it wasn't the AP course aligned with College Board. However, a lot of our students would take the BCPS pre-calculus class and then take the AP exam and do well. So what we've done is next year we will be offering AP pre-calculus in alignment with the College Board, so that the students are taking the class, the assessment, as well as getting that weighted course for their transcripts and for their GPA. Next slide. Course deletions. So course deletions are courses that will not be on our master schedule or proposed to not be on our master schedule for the upcoming year. One of the things, again, this was a big cleanup year for us. So duplicate courses were removed, courses that didn't have curriculum aligned to the college and career ready standards. We had courses called, trying to think of, like a resource room, where it really wasn't saying what was happening with the student there, but it was just a placeholder, and there wasn't an associated curriculum with it. So we really did a lot to clean that up. So if a student needs a second math period, there is a course related to supplemental math support, so that, again, a child's schedule is very clear as far as what courses they're taking. We renamed some courses. Part of that went with a lot with our ELD courses, since they all were previously included the nomenclature of ESOL with them. A change in level in a course. We noticed that as we look at some of our courses, they are more rigorous than just a standard level course. So if that was the case, they were then re-identified as an honors or GT level course. And then the content in the course might be taught actually in a different course or is obsolete. So that's really when we're going through all of our curricula and looking at, what are the materials that teachers are using for these courses? Is this a course that still meets the rigor of the standards? Is this content still isolated to just being taught within this course, or is this content information that's taught across multiple courses? Next slide. So there are updates of courses and deletions in every content, and that was really done to, one, provide a better cohesive product for teachers to use and for master schedulers to use when they're working on scheduling kids in courses. At the same time, it gives parents, guardians, a much clearer picture of what their students are taking, because the names are very aligned with what the course actually is. And especially for our reading interventions, again, a parent would not have any confusion as to what reading intervention their child is receiving, because it is clearly articulated on both in their schedule, in focus, as well as on their transcripts. Are there any questions? I tried to talk as fast as I could so everyone can go to their events.
You did good, Dr. DiDonato. Any questions about the changes that she described?
This is Ms. Dominaski. I just have 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry. The Wilson reading, are these being taught by the trained teachers, not the certified teachers?
So every teacher that is teaching an intervention has been trained to teach it.
Based on what the program recommends for the training.
Right.
So I'm sorry, Ms. Dominowski, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I mean, I know we go back and forth on this. It's just that there is there is a difference between the trained teachers, which based on what their recommendations, the teachers are all fully trained, but there's a more intense certification in Wilson reading that we only have the one teacher still, correct?
That's correct. So to answer your question, no, every Wilson course is not taught by the Wilson certification. They have been trained based on the publisher guidelines for implementation. We do also provide additional job embedded coaching and professional learning along the way. And we still do encourage people that would like to pursue that. We would help support them. So the one that we did get certified, our office paid for them to do that opportunity. And so we continue to find people that are interested in that, and we will nurture that and support it both financially and shoulder to shoulder resource with them.
Thank you. And then lastly, with the OG in high school and middle school, is this the 60-hour Bowman or the 30-hour ISME? I don't know if I'm saying it wrong, but which
it would be a combination of both based on depending on what the teacher was actually trained in. We do have some teachers who've been to both trainings. So
Yes.
And it's so when this is to sort of identify that a student is on their schedule receiving or in Gillingham, and then that data, when the student is scheduled into that in Performance Matters, where we're keeping our intervention data, that is where we're disaggregating which intervention materials are being used, whether it's Bowman or IMSI.
Is there an IMSI that is geared towards middle school and high school OG? Because the one I saw was just, it seemed to be K through 2.
So the scope and sequence for OG really has to do with the initial placement that the student takes. And so then it tells you where you should start within their scope and sequence. Additionally, what IMSI offers, in addition to what we are more familiar with the standard OG scope and sequence, they do morphology, which would be for students that still need that very structured literacy approach, but have mastered the basic scope and sequence of OG. And then morphology would be additional ways to use a structured literacy approach to help students that have been successful with using the OG methodology.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think that Ms. Stileski has 3 minutes. Do you have any questions, Ms. Stileski?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. DiDonato, we need to vote on these changes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'd like to try to vote on it before Ms. Stileski has to leave. Are there any final burning questions? We can also ask more questions afterwards, but any questions before I ask for a motion to approve? Okay, then may I have a motion to approve the consideration of the course changes for 2025, 2026?
So moved, Stileski.
Thank you. Is there a second? I think Ms. Chickaloo, did you? Thank you. Ms. Cox, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Ms. Chigakulu,
Yes.
Ms.
I just-
Dominowski,
No,
Do you want me to tell Rachel that it's okay or
Ms.
hit
Ms.
pause?
Solowski,
Yes.
Ms. Lichter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Delusky, for staying on as long as you could. Are there any other questions? I didn't want to cut the questions short about the course changes. Are there any other questions? Ms. Chigakalu, did you have any questions about it?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dominowski, did you have any further questions?
no,
I am so
thank you.
sorry. I
No.
did have one.
You did have one. Okay, Ms. Chigakalu?
Yeah. Now, I was just wondering, how are students being informed of the new course options available, especially for those who may not see themselves in AP or GT? And I know with the new language option for 5th level, kind of for students who may have started in Spanish 1 or Spanish 2 and didn't know that they had those alternate pathways outside of AP Spanish, how is that information kind of also being dispensed to them?
So we work really close with the Office of School Counseling to provide that information. We actually do an update with all the counselors, middle and high school, to go through the course updates, the updated course guide that's in focus. And then the Office of School Counseling also then takes that all the information and creates a course registration guide, which the counselors then use when they're meeting with students as far as looking at their schedules and as they're planning for next year. So that's a tool. And we really rely on our partners in the Office of School Counseling, as they're the ones in the schools meeting with students, looking at the different course options and their different course plans. Again, with the addition of the language, the accelerated language pathway courses that are not AP, we are really hoping that we're going to have more students who might take another year of a language. And so the counselors, as well as the world language teachers who were really instrumental in moving that curriculum review process forward and looking at the materials, and they're super excited about it. So a combination of the teachers who are teaching maybe Spanish 4 right now, and talking with their students about, hey, you know what, there's this other option, and then our school counselors who meet with students to really work on their schedules.
Thank you. And for students who are currently engaged, who maybe are in Spanish 3 as a sophomore or junior and plan on taking Spanish 4 and then Spanish or AP Spanish their senior year, would this detract them from the original track they were on to take AP Spanish as a senior, or they would still be allowed to jump over AP Spanish? That's just, jump over Spanish 5. Spanish 5 is just an alternative pathway for students who don't think they're ready for AP.
Yep, it's to provide that extra time for them, so that they have another year of that really rich, complex language work before moving on to AP. But if there's a student who is ready to go forward, we're certainly not working to hold anybody back.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is announcements, and our next curriculum committee meeting will be held on June 12th, 2025. Is there any further business from anyone? Okay, so thank you to everyone who's presented this evening. Thank you, board members, for your questions. Hearing no further business, the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Good night.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.